Welcome to Season 1 of the Resilient Dad Show. When I became a single dad and had to navigate social parenting issues and the complexity of the family legal system, I felt confused and alone with nowhere to turn. That's why I've created the Resilient Dad Show, a place that I so badly needed and wish had been available during the grueling and challenging times of working through my own experience. This show will feature industry experts in mental health, social services, and personal development, along with resilient dad role models whose stories of overcoming the challenges of co-parenting will create a new vision for the life you and your kids deserve. If you have any questions or want to suggest a future guest on the show, please visit resilientdad.fm for more information. Welcome to the Resilient Dad Show. And on today's episode, we have Paul Withall, advocate for suicide awareness and founder of Zerosuicide. Zerosuicide purely operates off personal time invested by people who are, passionate about the movement. They don't take any donations or anything like that, and an organisation that purely operates from the heart. So Paul brings to light the seriousness of men's suicide in Australia and the need for a direct gender approach. Paul, welcome to the show and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you for the opportunity to bring some real awareness to the public.
Yeah, no, it's definitely information that needs to be told, and the more awareness that's brought to light, I believe that that will help to for a solution to be come to be able to solve the problem that we have here in Australia with men's suicide. So, Paul, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what got you started with the Zerosuicide program?
Yeah. So basically, my business, I've grown up as a travelling show person. Some people would call me a carny, but yeah, that's what I've done. I've been privileged enough to be around a lot of young blokes and see their problems, the staff that come in and out of our industry. What actually happened? We've had a few. We've got a little Facebook group together and noticed a few issues in there with people being bullied and things like that. And we actually had a guy that ended up jumping off a bridge, and that was because of a minor reason. Through that, through helping other people, I've been to hospitals with people and men, and seen the lack of support and being turned away. It's abhorrent. But the other reason, on International Men's Day, we started to share a meme around in Facebook and noticed that it wasn't going anywhere. So I put a test out and we shared it to like 60, 80 groups just to see. And it didn't get any likes, like maybe 2 likes. And we realized there was an algorithm that's actually stopping men's issues from coming to the table and to the public light. And, and at the end of the day, everyone says, men need to talk more, men need to do this. But if we don't have the social media tools to do that, and we're actually being controlled by higher powers, that's going to make men not, reach out for help, because what's the point if no one can see? If you post up something on social media saying you need help because you're a man, if they're not going to share it, who's going to be able to help these people?
And so, fortunately there's, like yourself and the movement that you've created to bring that awareness, and it's, I guess, up to us as individuals to spread the word and the information, and then that way, lives aren't, lost as they are. And so, when you've worked with these men and you've supported these guys, what's the most common reason that men get to that point where they think that that's the only option left?
Yeah, well, I'll explain it a little bit differently. So we have this situation in society where everyone thinks that suicide's related to mental health. Now, firstly, I want to state this. So if you don't have a diagnosable mental health issue, you can't actually get admitted into a ward or stay in hospital for more than 24 hours if you don't have an injury. So that's something the public need to know. In that light, so about 51.5% of men's suicide is mental health related or diagnosable. The other half of suicide, and the 3 main reasons that men actually take their own lives, is family relationship breakdown, number 1. Number 2 is court financial issues, loss of children or access, and loss of job. Financial links into the last one. So those 3 main reasons, if you actually have an attempt, go to hospital for those reasons, there's no actual help there.
Yeah.
So, and I've actually seen this firsthand. I'll quickly tell a quick story about this. So I took a bloke into hospital who had a resus attempt. So he needed to be resussed, and I followed the ambulance to hospital. I sat there with him.
Yeah.
Now, seen the CAT team come in and assessed him, and his reason was, look, I'm going through family court, and my partner's living in my house because she put a false accusation against me that I didn't do, and I have a restraining order. Now I'm living at my parents' place, and it's driving me crazy that I have to ask my parents for help. Well, their answer to that was, look, we'll come back. They came back with a phone number and said the CAT team will catch up with you shortly. And they sent him out of the hospital. Now, that man had actually flatlined. They had to resus him. He was in hospital 3 hours. Now, that's just disgusting, disgraceful. The lack of care is abhorrent. The service is not there. And this man had actually done the whole thing, made it the whole way through. And yeah, sorry, I'll get passionate people that are listening. So if I come across that way, I'm not trying to be offensive. These things are real and raw, and they need to be shown that way.
Yeah. And as you're mentioning, like, so these, the services in terms of, like you're saying, they can't stay in hospital longer than 24 hours. What's available, or what are the things that men are doing to deal with these challenges? Because we all have to cope with what we're going through one way or another, whether it's through something positive or negative. So what are some of the things that most common ways that men are dealing with their challenges, because that support that they need specifically is just not there?
Yeah, well, sadly, they turn to alcohol and drugs and act out. So sadly, that's what happens. There's positive things that happen too, but the most common thing is to turn to alcohol, drugs, lose your job. When men are going through these things, there's a lot to it. It's a very, very deep topic. But these men are stressed going to work, and they end up injured at work because their mind's not on the job. There's a lot of underlying things. But to answer your question simply, it's turning to alcohol, drugs, or actually becoming aggressive, changing their persona because they can't deal with the problem. It actually it creates a mental health problem. It creates a depression. It creates a situation where that person is not going to be the same anymore. So a man that's going through these sorts of things, they'll act different, which will then in turn force people away from wanting to help them because they don't know what the underlying problem is. Yeah. So it turns their friends away from being able to support them.
Yeah. I'll share a experience and story of my own, one as a child. So my father, who came to Australia from Vietnam when he was quite young. I only found out recently that he'd spent a couple of years prior to coming to Australia that in a refugee camp in Indonesia. And by the time I was, 6, my parents had split up. And I think that started his spiral of, losing his purpose, his meaning. As you're mentioning, these other guys, loss of family, loss of, job, and all these other battles. And we went to his home country when I was about 9, 10. And during the trip, that kind of triggered, memories, and he hadn't dealt with the problems that occurred in his younger days and so forth. And he ended up having, like a nervous breakdown. We found out later when we came back to Australia that he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. The alcohol didn't help the situation. And I remember waking up one of the first nights of the trip and my dad choking, and he drank pretty much a bottle of, Dettol, because he was trying to take his life. And treated or unsupported, if things are left so long, I firsthand, I can see, where men can feel like in terms of that's the best option, which really they just need to be able to see that we can work through their challenges and that, things are, can get better. So what are the services that are currently available for men?
Well, in Australia, we're lucky we've got so many different empathetic men in our country. The empowerment programs that are coming up, there's a lot of men's empowerment programs that have really grown in the last 4 years, which is good because at the end of the day, that's the core issue, is re-empowering yourself. So that's good. But when we talk about government side, pretty much almost nothing. To be honest, there's almost nothing. A man, and it's because of society. It's a money thing, which I'm going to touch base on this. We've got men suffering domestic violence that can't get into refuges because we have a law that actually states that you cannot bring children into a men's refuge. Now, I know of different organisations that have tried to build men's refuges or get the funding for it, but they come up against this brick wall. There's no point because you can't have children in men's refuges. So that's just one simple law that could be changed. There's that side of it. But when we talk about family relationship breakdown, so the other service you've got is Relationships Australia. I know of. And any man watching this will know, if you go to that service, you're not going to get any real assistance. The services that are there aren't actually orientated towards men's issues. It's looked at as a whole, there's really nothing. All it is counselling services, phone services, but we've got some really good organisations, Dads in Distress Service, terrific organisation. They don't just do podcasts. They go out, they do barbecues, they do that face-to-face thing, But when you look at the other suicide services, they don't do that. At the end of the day, you've got to feel someone, and I hope that people can feel me through the phone, but you've got to be, it's got to be a connection. You don't get a connection unless you're actually facing that person. And that's what's really important with men's issues. The services do not exist. And the services that are there are only phone numbers or podcasts, or not podcasts, or Zoom meetings and things like that, where you have to wait to talk. You can't, because you've got 5 or 6 people in there, you can't actually be yourself and pour your heart out, and you've got to be respectful. So, it's not the way around it. There's nothing, basically nothing.
That human interaction. And like you're saying, there's only so many people that can speak at a time during those those Zoom meetings, and it's hard for everyone to, if they're going through something really challenging and they need a lot more support, it's they don't necessarily get that. And
if we take away that, if we take away all the different organisations that are doing these things for free, the Victorian Brotherhoods, the Dads Against Discrimination, all these people that are doing these services for free, if we took them away, our rate would be so much higher. It'd still be climbing. So I just want to say that to anyone watching that do run one of these organisations, the men of Australia, thank you. So sorry.
No, definitely. You mentioned in terms of the family courts and what services are available for men going through that journey. I know myself, it was a 4.5 year journey, and it was definitely one of the most challenging, not only financially but emotionally. And I remember the first time I went to court, the first pretty much person I saw was a father, sitting on a chair with his head in his hands, crying because who knows what the result of his court case was, but most likely he was told that he wasn't going to see his child for some time. So what services are available there?
Well, family court, as far as I'm concerned, and I will say this straight up, it's horrible for men. Nothing. But I'm not going to be discriminatory, but there's rooms in family court. So let's look at this. The majority of people that are attending family court are men, that are on the fight to get their kids back. But they've got rooms in some of these courts for women to be alone, to get areas of help. But there's no room for men. If we actually had at every single family court, we had a counsellor for men, we could actually, and it's something real simple that we can be instated with the funding that already exists, we could have a counsellor, and I believe any man or woman that goes to family court should have a risk assessment on their health. If we were to do that, we'd curb the rate. There's nothing there. Look, at the end of the day, I think most men watching this would know, but we need to educate. So if you make an accusation of domestic violence or something else or this claim in family court that, you don't deserve, you've got the other half saying you don't deserve to see your children, that should really be assessed properly. Now, those, it's no different for a man or a woman to love your child just as much. I mean, just because you're a girl does not mean you love your child more than that man loves their child. And that's not recognised in family court. And when we've got so many men in family court through this trauma, they're losing this. We did a poll, and it's a minimum $10,000 to fight for your child in family court. Some people don't have that money. And you know what? It's very, very hard to get free legal aid for family court. And those legal aid solicitors, they can't always be there because their caseload's so high. So that's just one part of it. Like the problems in family court are huge, but that's that recognition of that needs to happen from a government perspective, that men love their children just as much as women. And look, even if a man makes a mistake and he has acted out and he might have been domestically violent, he might have made a mistake, that doesn't mean that's who he is. And he should be held to account for the rest of his life for that. He should be given an opportunity to make change and to show change. But there's no way of doing that. Now, we all make mistakes. Anyone that walks this planet that thinks that they've never made a mistake in their life, well, I'm not going to pick on that, but it's just a bit of reality check there, It's a death. It is just most of the men's suicides all got some sort of link to having a child or a relationship breakdown. Almost all. Yeah. Whether it's caused from mental health or not, there's got to be a proper service in place and it's got to happen. But these services can't happen because we don't have the right links in Parliament, so to speak.
Yeah.
Sorry, family court's horrible, mate.
No, it's definitely an experience I wish no parent had to go through. So, like you mentioned, like the children, what's the actual impact on the actual children that you've seen with a loss of a father because they've taken their life, or through this the journey of having to deal with all this these issues that are going on between the parents?
Look, I've got to be honest. So taking a father away from a child for whatever reason, it's going to have an impact on the child. We all know this.
Yeah.
Whether even if the dad's been a bad dad, because there are bad dads, even if the dad's been a bad dad, that is still, and taking that dad away from that child, it's still going to have an impact on that child. But the only way that child can get help is actually to go through child services, which then adds more problems. There's no direct, I mean, there's lots of different counselling service for children, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to that issue, there's no same thing for men, and that's what I was saying about that counselling. There's nothing really there, but at the end of the day, we should be looking after these children. There should be an impact statement made on the child, and it's parental alienation. Some of these children are brainwashed. There's a lot of men. A lot of these court cases can last up from 2 to 5 years. I've seen them up to 10 years. And if your dad's fighting for you or your mum's fighting for you, let's be honest here, if your mum or your dad's fighting for you in court, who's actually looking after the well-being of the child? Not many. I can tell you we had an 11-year-old down here in Victoria, took his own life. 11 years old, guys, took his own life, and he actually did say that he had enough of not being able to see his dad. He stated it.
Yeah.
That's why he did it. He'd had enough, and he had enough of it, and he wanted to. And he was actually, that parental alienation caused an 11-year-old kid to swing on a rope. Like, yeah. And I'll say it too. Look, it's a continued, to answer your question a bit deeper. So these kids then react at school, So when they're acting out at school, they might, to just act differently, and because they're acting differently at school, in turn they get singled out. Other kids don't want to hang around with them because they've got problems and this sort of stuff, and that's what plants the seed to the mental health problems. So they might not have a mental health problem at that time, but once they're segregated, there's the start of depression. There's the start of the borderline personality disorders. Something Zerosuicide actually pushed through, trying to push for is to get a counselling, an impact a presentation at every school that should be done to empower both children to understand. So basically to stand up in front of the class at, say, grade 5, each kid to stand in front of the class and say something you don't like in your life. And then something that's happened to you in your life that you think might have affected you. And by doing that, and it only takes an hour, and by doing that, it actually, without telling kids they're wrong for this or wrong for that, it actually shows kids that they can talk and that everyone has issues.
Yeah.
Something so simple that can make change. And then reassess that. So when these kids get into year 7 and start high school, do it again. Yeah. And by doing that, it's going to naturally stop bullying without saying you're a bully. It's going to naturally make kids know that, hang on, other kids are going through things. But our education department won't do that. But we can change it.
It's definitely not there. Definitely focused. And I think there's probably a lot of other things in the education system that, would be great for kids to learn prior to becoming adults. Because, I guess once they leave school, they're in the big world, and I don't think we're necessarily really prepared for emotionally and in terms of life skills for that, especially with those challenges.
Well, look, child. A lot of people don't. It's a lot. So we'll just touch base quickly. Childhood trauma is so much harder, and this is it's so much harder for a young boy to admit they've been raped. Okay, because it's that gay stigma. Okay, and it's got to be true here. And these young boys hold on to that for so long. It's not funny. And that's just one part of it. And then you've got, the transitioning kids or the kids that are or automatically gay, them to stand up and talk about that and be proud of that. They might not want to be linked to the LGBTQI community, and because that's their avenue, once again, that can stop them. So, it's a fair bit there, but there's an opportunity we have. Like mental health is one thing, but there's also mental first aid, and that's something that doesn't come up. We need to instate mental first aid into our children, at school, not just mental health, because mental health says, you're crazy, you can get this, but there's two sides to mental health. There's mental first aid, which you need to deal with to stop the mental health traumas coming into effect. If you put the first aid in beforehand, we actually stop the pressure on the mental health system. It's so simple. We all know this.
That's it. Looking for the prevention and with the your the aim to push for a minister for men in Australia and having a direct gender approach, because we're all male and females. We all have different needs, so not exactly the same. What are the kind of preventions or services you think that males would benefit a lot more from, and by having that minister for men to be the voice that also women have at the moment that men don't have? What are the things that you believe that could really help men in their challenges they're going through?
Look, firstly, proper investigation, bringing the facts to the surface in Parliament. So that's the first most important thing, actually bringing to light, those 3 core issues: the family relationship breakdown, the loss of access to children, financial jobs, and bringing to light those issues, and then researching professionally what would be the best things we could instate. Suicide centres maybe is one thing, for men, and just put those centres in place until the numbers come down, because eventually they will come down with the right approach. So something that we actually planted a seed with corrections, so that whereas young offenders, so I'll touch base in a second, but where young offenders that haven't actually done prison time and they've only their first few mistakes can go and be put for a certain percentage of their community correction hours into a men's shed or into a football team on the capacity of standing with the coach, that type of thing. So that intervention, early intervention, and look, that's just couple of examples. So that's just 2 things. But at the end of the day, to instate any of these things and make them law and change the procedure, you have to go through 4 or 5 different ministers. It has to be assessed by all these different things. So when we're talking about a gendered approach, we need that minister to do that on behalf of these men and boys. Looking into the family court, that other thing I brought up before, we need a counsellor in family court, someone and all family courts, that every single person that goes through family court, men, women and children, all need to be assessed during the process to see how they're coping, So by doing this proper investigation, they can then go, hang on, that is needed. This is an intervention. This is a place we can make a difference. Let's put it in, even just trial it. And then that minister can bring it back to the table in 6 months with results to show whether it's working, whether it's not working. But it's to basically try different things, because a lot of people don't realise it's been for 40 years, men and boys suicide have been 70% of all suicides. So the approach that they're using is not working, and it has failed. So that's why this Minister for Men needs to come in, research the reasons why, take into account all this stuff and start trialing different programs, different approaches, and listening not just to the major services, actually listening to men, listening to the women that have lost men. That's how we make a difference, finding out those underlying issues and asking these people what they think would have made a difference. So that's what a Minister for Men can do. Not only just quickly, so if we have everyone saying that domestic violence is only happening to women, it's all done by men. Okay, let's instate a Minister for Men to research why, and in turn bring down put things in place. We bring down the domestic violence rate that's happening to women, because we'll have the correct services in place. So there's benefits for men and for women.
Of having these services, because exactly, if it is only men, which is obviously not the case, then at least give the men the support they actually need to be able to make that change, so that it minimises, and like you're saying, educating the younger generation, having that mentorship, whether it's through Men's Shed or, like you're saying, football clubs, with having that, being with that coach to see that, because they might not have role models in their life, and that could be a reason why they've, steered the way that they have, just purely because of not having that role model, or that support, or that network. And it definitely happens far too often.
Yeah. And so I just trying to look up something.
No, all good. And can you tell us a bit about the event you've got coming up? 2,500 boots on the lawn at Parliament House. Can you tell us about that?
So it's we've got a little Facebook page called Zerosuicide Community Awareness Program and Walks to Instate a Minister for Men. We launched that Facebook page when we put forward our proposal to instate a Minister for Men 2 years ago. And from that, we've got a great group of little people in there that really want to fight. So we put forward, we want Parliament and the public to notice, does anyone have any ideas? And one of our members said, well, let's do something at Parliament. Let's tie some balloons or do something like that. So we put it to vote. And shoes was the idea. So we're going to lay down 2,500 shoes on the lawn of Parliament and do a walk. There's a few other things happening on that day. So we've got some members of Parliament that Zerosuicide have been working with over the last couple of years that support our work. They're going to come down and speak and be part of the event. Some of these members have actually had to take leave from Parliament. So, they've showed their care there. So well done. So we're going to do a walk. We've got some really good names coming down to speak. We've got, and I'll probably get these wrong, but we've got Jill Jury, the advocate for justice. She's a lovely lady, and her passion is huge. And she sees all different sides of what happens. Being an advocate for justice, it's not just men, it's everything. So she can see both sides. She's going to have a speech there. We've got Robin Bowles, author Robin Bowles, coming to have a speak. She's a world-renowned author and acclaimed in Australia, a true crime author. Through almost all parts of her books, she can see this little thing that's happening with men and the lack of support and interventions. So she's going to speak. I've got the founder of DIDS, Dads in Distress. He's coming down to talk. I'll be talking. And there's a few others. So that's just a teaser on that. And we're going to walk around the boots once and then have some speeches. And then we're going to walk the members of Parliament that are going to be there. They have from 12 till 12:30. They've got their opportunity to speak. And then straight after, those members of Parliament are going to walk around the boots with us, hopefully. We're going to invite them to. And then we've got a ribbon tying ceremony. Yeah. So there's a few other things. We've asked anyone with fallen, we call them fallen soldiers, the men that have suicided. We call them fallen soldiers. Any families that have fallen soldiers can place boots down on the lawn and put a note inside it for the public to read, about their situation and the person that's fallen.
Yeah.
We've got some boots getting painted in the LGBTQI colours because at the end of the day, over 60% of the LGBTQI community that are completing suicide are men, gay and trans men.
Yeah.
And same with the Aboriginals. We have that same issue going on there. So we're going to paint some shoes up that way because, the segregation on suicide numbers is a problem. So it's about coming together. It's about understanding and just giving that visual perspective that men are men, and this is the result of the lack of services. So these 2,500 shoes it's a very big day, and we've actually had a little bit of a practice with some shoes to lay out how big it is. And oh my God, you're going to have to be there to see. It's amazing how much 2,500 shoes take up.
Yeah.
And when you think of just those shoes, wow. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying the significance of the number, 2,500. What does that?
So we have in Australia.
Represent?
Yeah, so it's a minimum of 2,500 men taking their own life every year, and that's successfully for any one successful attempt. There's 4 or 5 that have failed. So that's just some idea. But yeah, the 2,500 is the average rate of men's suicide. Women's about in between 700 to 800. So just to give you that comparison, this isn't about taking the spotlight off women's suicide at all. At the end of the day, bringing up the topic of suicide in its own and showing this representation, getting more services in place, like I say, it benefits women because there's more services to help men's issues. So in turn, this is going to help women's suicide as well. But yeah, that's about that. Yeah. So it's a minimum of 2,500 men every year completing suicide. That's just completing, Yeah, there's so much being an advocate and a researcher for suicide prevention. There's so much I could talk about on any topic that comes to suicide. We've got 63% of all suicides are on a rope when it comes to men. And on that topic, we've got with nearly all those men try to get off the rope. So, anyone watching, we've got to say this. You couldn't physically put your hands around your neck and keep going until you died. So please think about that if you try to attempt on a rope. Yeah. And that's something we're working on with, like I've spoke to you earlier prior to our conversation. So, yeah, sorry, I'll go off tangent, but, yeah, just want to plant that in there.
That's right. Yeah. And the event, the date, the details, can you fill us in?
Sorry. So it's Monday the 21st of November. So that's Monday, and it's a Parliament sitting week, so we could end up with a lot more politicians there. The organisation and the leadership team will be there about 8:30, starting to lay the boots out. It's going to take a while, set up the stage, the speakers, that sort of stuff. Yeah. We've got a team meeting there at 8:30, so if you do want to come along and just help us lay the boots out and be part of making a difference, you're more than welcome to. The event itself, the first speech starts at 11 a.m. And the event, the speeches and the walks will go from about 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. So it's not a long day. It's a long day for the organisers, but yeah, for the people, we don't want to hold them up too long. And a lot of people are coming a long way. So there's people coming from Western Australia just to lay their boots down for their fallen soldiers. And that's so special so special to give those parents and families that chance to actually not just, say goodbye, but actually say goodbye and be there to make a difference to stop others, those warriors are huge. Yeah.
No,
yeah. Sorry. That
definitely.
affects me.
No, there's a lot of people that it's not only the individual that takes their life, but there's a lot of people that are impacted by it. And, those people definitely can understand, and hopefully they can bring the awareness as well to the public on the impacts of their, of what it causes to family and friends and their children that are impacted by it. And definitely, even if there's only one life, it's one life too many. So, Paul, what's the best place for people to reach out if they wanted to connect with you and they wanted to find out more about what you're doing?
The Facebook page is Zero Suicide Community Awareness Program and Walks to Prevent Men's Suicide. You're more than happy to call me. If I don't answer, I will get back to you, and that's 0457 100 10. And look, any organisation, we're not, we do this for free. Our organisation don't take no money. We're inviting any organisation that deals with men's issues, suicide prevention, awareness, come down on the day and put your banner up, and get yourself some publicity. We've got the media. Well, the media is hiding a lot of men's issues, but at the end of the day, having the ministers there, the media spotlight's going to be there. So any organisation is welcome to come down and attend and use the day for themselves. It's not about zero suicide. It's about men. And if you want to, put your banner up, somewhere away from us, that's fine. Use those shoes as a backdrop. Any organisation's welcome to do that.
Thank you very much. And Paul, I want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing. It's something that, is much needed, and it's going to save many lives, whether it's not necessarily today or tomorrow, but further on down the track. I believe that the work that you're doing is definitely going to be a great contribution to men in our society in the future. So thank you very much for your time and coming onto the show. We appreciate what you've shared with us. And for everyone out there, if you get a chance, please go down and support the event and also connect with Paul to find out more information. And if there's anyone that needs help, to be able to direct him in ways that to be able to support him.
Before we wrap it up. So my organisation's done the 2022 Men's Suicide Report. Anyone's welcome to grab this. We've got our proposal to instate a Minister for Men. This is full of all unbiased, documented facts. It's 22 pages long. It's fully researched. It's all based on government statistics. Any organisation that would want to use this, and like I say, it's not about me. It's not about zero suicide. It's about the truth. Just take it, take the front cover away and use the stats. This is about making a difference. So anyone that wants that, jump on the email. It's DragonPaulZ, so at hotmail.com. And or just give us a call on that number, but find us on the Facebook page. But this is Zero Suicide Report. I think you've had a read, Pat. It's very in-depth and it shows the truth and where things are going wrong. Anyone's welcome to have that for free, and we'll send it out to you to utilise it. And same with the proposal to instate a Minister for Men. We have ministers for women, Aboriginal people. We have ministers for LGBTQI. Where's our Minister for Men? So, sorry, Pat, just wanted to get that in there.
No dramas, and thanks for offering that out to everyone. So everyone, thanks again, and I hope you were able to gain some value and insight into the seriousness of men's suicide and the need for a direct gender approach. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Thanks for your time. Thanks, everybody.